Thank you for joining, and I'll be taking you through an orientation process. So usually in Deep Thought, what we do is we look at the reflections that the others have sent in, and we give some feedback about the reflections that the others have sent in. This serves two purposes. In case you're starting your first day of observation today, that gives you a sense of what the others are doing and what this process is about, if you're curious about what this process is. And in case today is your second day of observation, you get feedback on how you could observe better, how you could grow through the power of reflection. If today is your third day or something like that, then yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of opportunity to do better in terms of reflection and make most of this selection process. But before I go into the feedback of the reflections, let me put it this way. The whole philosophy of this selection process is, once we bring people into this process and we stimulate people through the power of reflection, there are some people who are like, you tell me what to do, I will do, like robots. We're not interested in them. There are people who get better from day 1 to day 2, from day 2 to day 3. And that gets exciting for us, because if you're able to get better even before you're hired, even before we actively start investing in your self-development, we know that you're one of the candidates we would like to hire. Because please understand one thing, hiring is a very big decision for any organization. Once we hire an individual, we would want to stay with the individual, because you might hear so many news of firing, but any responsible organization would never look at firing as an instrument. It's a very tough decision. So at the level of hiring itself, an organization would want to understand the candidate, would want to understand the fitment of the candidate to the particular role. As far as the role that you applied for is concerned, it is not the kind of a role which 99% of human population does. You've applied to an innovation-oriented role where there are no straightforward rules, where you figure things out every day, where you're probably the only one in the world who's doing something of this kind. Sounds exciting, isn't it? But again, that's a responsibility, because look, in an innovation setup, you're probably trying 100 things, 90 of them bombed horribly, and maybe 4 or 5 of them work. So it can be a very demoralizing experience to see a lot of your ideas fail. But then that's the whole idea of innovation, right? That you keep trying things, you fail early, leave that behind and try the next experiment, and whatever clicks, you do more and more of it. So innovation ecosystems require a very different, personality. So through this, 3 days, I mean, if you've applied for a graphic design or something like that, it's a 3-day observation. If you've applied for a very research intensive kind of a role, we do a 6-day observation. And the whole point is to observe your personality. Now, after this observation, you guys will be put in touch with your project lead. Your project lead is supposed to talk to you and clear you, and only then you get hired. So now, what is the opportunity that you have in the observation process? The opportunity that you have in the observation process is, you understand how to analyze things. You understand how to improve what you're working on. So by the time you go and meet your project lead, you'd have already picked up a lot of experiences. You'd already picked up a lot of ideas, and you can bring those ideas into your interaction with your project lead. So look, I'm a recruiter. So when I look at a candidate, I don't look at skills of the candidate. I look at the potential of a candidate. Is this candidate able to learn? Is this candidate able to grow? And so on. But a project manager is not trained like a recruiter. A project manager is only able to look at, how is this person today? Is this person good enough, or is this person not good enough? So we as recruiters, we advise the project lead that, hey, this is a very good candidate. Don't judge the candidate by the skill set today. This candidate will be a star one day. Because I have seen this candidate over 3 days, and this candidate seems to have improved the quality of observations from day 1 to day 3. But then I can only recommend the candidate. But end of the day, the person who's going to work with you is your project lead. Correct? So if I strong arm your project manager and say, no, you have to take this person, it's not going to work, because if your project lead doesn't like you, if your project lead is not confident with you, doesn't work, right? I mean, at Deep Thought, I do that. As a CEO, for my internal projects, I tell my team leads, nothing doing, take this fellow and work with this fellow. It happens inside Deep Thought because we are a very different ecosystem. But when we do external projects, there are other project leads that usually a lot more experienced. So they have certain standards they look forward to in a candidate. Now, does that mean we leave you if the project lead is not happy with you? No. The idea is to work with you and help you improve so that when you talk to the project lead is super convinced with your caliber. But what I would look for when I talk to you, when I observe you over this period is, are you showing that ability to learn and develop over a period of time? That is what I am most concerned with. I am least bothered about your skill set. I am an individual. If given a chance, I will want to hire 7th and 8th class students. I will not be interested in adults. But unfortunately, I don't get to hire as many of them. So, which is why I think, Asawari, when you said that you just finished high school, I'm like, yeah, we're quite happy to have a lot of high school students here in Deep Thought. We have one 19-year-old who leads our Organization Growth Lab. There's an 18-year-old who leads our Career Progression Lab, Tushar. So we like hiring a lot of young people, right? The idea is young people are capable of doing so many things, but then not everyone understands. So that is why we would want to help you in presenting yourself really, really well before you meet the project lead, right? But as far as I am concerned, I'll only look at your ability to learn and look at your how quickly you're able to pick up things, how well you're able to grasp things. So if you're a youngster with that curiosity, where you're going from one breakout room to the other breakout room and you're picking up a lot of insights, I'd be like, pick up this person immediately. There are some candidates where I go to the client and say, if you don't hire this candidate, it's your loss. In 6 months, I'm sure you'll repent. I'll get that candidate after 6 months and show you what you lost. That's the extent with which I talk to my project managers. Key. I say, boss, I'm very good at spotting youngsters and I've spotted this person. It's your loss if you don't take. But then there are a lot of cases where the project lead is okay with the candidate. I'm not okay. Where I look for, what I look for is the curiosity of a child. Are you able to see things? And I'll tell you why that's super important. If you have the, sponge type personality, right? Sponge, as in you're in a conversation that two people are talking. You're just listening to two people are talking and you just pick up insights just by seeing them, just by seeing how they talk. This is where the power of reflection helps you become that sponge. When you become that sponge, the amount of training that you require for any project is very less. You become self-managed. You don't need somebody to come and spoon feed you. You're not a junior. You start acting like a senior. Right? So, Dahanaz, you can get in touch with Manish. I'm in a meet right now, but you can get in touch with Manish if you have any doubt. Manish is on your WhatsApp. Okay. So, I hope you guys got the argument of being a sponge, right? How quickly you're able to pick up things. So now let's go into this reflection. Let's see some of the feedback which I have around the reflections which came in from different groups. I'm sharing my screen. So let's go over the first one. I started my day with why observations are significant. Later, there was a Socratic dialogue. Okay, this is more of recall than reflection. So she is recalling what happened there. The amount of feelings described in this is a lot lesser, right? So she said she felt like a lot of brainstorming goes, but that's more of, okay, a very basic observation that a lot of discussion goes into a dialogue, but her own feelings didn't come out. So a good reflection has your own emotions, sort of brought in there. So one is own feelings did not come in. A reflection has own feelings. Second, concepts didn't come in. What are the concepts you learned? For example, what is the yin-yang approach? You could have, she could have elaborated more on that. So what is this 5 eyes technique? How did we do that 5 eyes technique? There was possibly one example they discussed there. She didn't go into details. She just gave a very, very, see, real learning is in the details. Real learning is not in writing summaries. Take examples. You take the reasons they discussed, right? They would have discussed some reason that this is 5 eyes technique is needed because of this. Why do we use 5 eyes technique? Because we do not want to find the symptom. We want to find the root cause. That's the purpose of 5 Whys technique. That's the reason of 5 Whys technique. She did not write the reason over there. So one, the thoughts can come in. Two, the concepts which are learned can come in. Very few concepts are brought in there. Three, the reasons that you learned, right? People would have said, we do this because of this. Reasoning is super important in innovation environments. See, in normal companies, normal colleges, people blindly follow things. People blindly accept things. But in an innovation environment, we would want people to reason, okay, why are we doing this? Why are we adopting this approach? For example, why am I asking you to do reflection every day? I told you that if you do reflection every day, you become like a sponge and you absorb, things from your surroundings on your own without being conscious about it. So I gave you a reason for an action, right? It's important to be able to reason things. So your reflection can bring in reasons. Your reflection can bring in your feelings. Your reflection can bring in concepts. Your reflection can bring in reasons, right? These are things which are very high quality reflection usually has. So all these three are missing in this reflection, but there's a bit of detail which is fine. So this is too brief, more of recall. Not many concepts picked up, which means this person is not developing from day 1 to day 2. Too brief, nothing sketched. Concepts are not there, no feelings, no examples for each other thing which is brought in, and no reasons which he has sketched over there. This is definitely better than the other two because she's brought in some detail, but again, concepts, feelings, reason is missing. This is a very poor reflection because no concepts at all, just recall. I doubt if the person was on the link from 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock, if this is how the reflection is. Now, when I see this, there is definitely detail, not many feelings, not many concepts brought in. It's like there's a lot of information, but information is not structured into concepts. Let me show you some of the better reflections which came in earlier. Okay, you see, he has expressed his feelings, what he felt over there, and he's gone into detail, right? Like what is transactional conversation, transformational conversation, what Tushar asked him. So he says, Tushar asked me this, then Harsh told this, then we figured this out. He's gone into the detail. So all the reasoning, right? How they argued about something, how they debated something and figured out something. He's brought the detail. And his own feelings sort of came in. So I know that this guy is actually making active attempts to learn. You see here again, she's going into details. She's putting her own her own feelings there. You see how comprehensive her reflection is. So here again, her thoughts and feelings were sort of sketched together really well. So this girl, Kritika, initially, she would not express her feelings as much. She was very formal. But you can see how she evolved. So what she was feeling internally, right? She was like, there are two kinds of mindsets. So she observed that Shagun was very happy, and then she is trying to articulate according to her what is the purpose of the happiness scorecard, why is it published every week, what does it do to someone. She's really analyzed things internally. And this is her own analysis, right? The tricky aspects when you do this surveys. Can you guys sort of, would someone want to go in with what did you observe? How do you think your reflections can be better? Would somebody want to go in? How do you think your reflections can be better? Just unmute yourself and go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, Rishi, please go ahead.
So I feel in my reflection, I need to add like more of the feelings. I only like put concepts in it and whatever I learned, like a recollection. So I think I need to like add like how I relate to what is taught and why it is taught. So yeah, that is what I learned and observe.
Small suggestion, Arushi. Instead of using the word need to, when we use the words like need to, have to, must, shall, these are authoritative verbs.
Yes.
We do it because someone is commanding us to, correct? But you say, if I express my feelings, I would connect with my learnings better.
Okay.
So what happens when we drop the need to? We end
I naturally do it for myself.
No. What happens when you drop the need to? You say, I need to describe my feelings.
I
have to is again authoritative.
I will express my feelings.
Still, you're imposing it on yourself. If you want to nurture your free thought, what can you do? If I express my feelings, then I would connect with my thoughts better.
Yeah. Yes.
What are you doing here? You're attaching a. In the first one, you said, I need to express my feelings. Second one, you said, if I express my feelings, I would connect with my learning. What is the difference between first version and second version?
In the first, I'm being forced. That's why I have to do that. And in the second version, it's like, if I like do it for myself, it's good for me.
You see the reason, right?
Yeah, I see the reason.
You're doing it because you feel it's good for you. You have used your own agency.
Yes.
You are deciding for yourself. It's not somebody else deciding for you.
Right.
So that free will or free thought is very, very important in innovation environments.
Yes.
People who exercise their free will are likely to go further in terms of challenging projects.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Arish, for sharing your perspective. Who wishes to go in? What do you see? How do you think your reflections can be nice? Anyone else? What is the room for improvement you see in your reflections?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, then can I go with that? Yeah. I think for the last one was for the video reflection that we had. It was like, I thought that it was more like a summary of the video that we have seen. But I think, yeah, for self-development and all, the things, what we think, what we feel, we grasp the concepts from that, and we add our points, our feelings, our mindset into this summary, what we are building on. So I think that is how it is done.
Okay. Thank you, Shahanas. Anyone else wants to go in?
So basically, I think most of the people watch that video and they tend to write the summary of that. And it's just because they are under this pressure that I need to be selected or I have to be selected. It's somewhere over there. So I think that if you just look at it from this perspective, that you are developing yourself and you're developing your mindset and your emotions and your feelings and you're able to express it. So that will be a better way of looking at writing a reflection, in my opinion, that you should write it genuinely, just not for getting an internship or a job, but just write it for your own development and to express your own emotions in your own way.
Yeah, so Savri, it is a little more than just expressing your emotions. Now, let us say you're a Python developer and you've learned something around Python. Now, when you just state what you've learned, right, you don't connect with that learning.
Yes.
But let us say you say that you come up with a reflection like, I wanted to figure out a way to perform the same operation multiple times. It would be too hectic and I was just getting frustrated doing the same thing again and again. Then I got to know that Python has this thing called a loop, and I run this loop and the same thing can, operate multiple times. And I found this to be very exciting that, a lot of repetitive tasks can be automated. So from now on, my thought process, like, show me the repetition, I'll make a product out of it. Show me that repetition and I want to make a product for it. I see opportunity in any repetition.
Yes.
I see products in any repetition. Now, this is reflection. When you see that reflection, you can produce technology of the highest quality. See, people who work in low quality technology companies, right? They follow what the project manager tells. They close their eyes and they just write what the project manager tells. At Deep Thought, we do not want such individuals. There are plenty of jobs. There are plenty of donkey jobs in software industry. We are not interested in those donkey jobs or donkey workers. We are interested in individuals who with own initiative can figure out what the project requires and make those decisions for the product. End of the day, your product manager might come up with ideas of how your product looks like, but your software developer still makes a lot of decisions about the software. So when the software developer is supposed to make decisions, you want the software developer to have the thought process to make those decisions.
Yes.
Unfortunately, our schools and colleges do not educate us to be decision makers. Our schools and colleges educate us to be followers.
Yes.
This reflection can
yes.
prepare us to be decision makers, informed decision makers. So this reflection is a fantastic exercise because whether you're a software developer or a data scientist or a growth hacker or a content writer or a industrial psychologist or whatever role you are, right? Doesn't matter. If you're making decisions, you become a more informed and better decision maker if you can reflect.
Yes.
It's for a deeper level connection between you and your profession.
Yes. Yes.
To be more mindful about whatever you do in your life. That's the power of reflection. I mean, I see that psychology students reflect quite well. And I see BTech students write the worst reflections. That's how BTech education is. No, it produces robots.
Yes.
So if you ask me for Deep Thought, I would prefer hiring a psychology student and teaching coding than take a BTech student. If at all I had to hire software developers in large quantities, which we're not hiring right now within our own project. So that's a big problem with our engineering curriculum. But rather what I do is I pick up those engineers who are very curious. Those engineers, despite the BTech program, people who still want to observe, people who are still curious. So go ahead, observe your things, express your feelings. You'll become a software developer of the highest quality. For whichever profession, right? Not just for software. Yeah. Anyone else wants to go in? What did you observe in the reflections which I showed you, the good reflections? Where do you see as a room for improvement? Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, Srishti, please wait.
Hello, sir. I'm Srishti. Actually, when I go through that video, round 3, I thought it's like a group discussion conducted in other companies. Like when we talk about one topic, we have to write this after watching the video. But after when I started watching the video, it's like we have to. I felt is. We have to express what is in our mind, and we have to we have to show our thoughts. What if we in watching that video, what are the thoughts in our mind? We have to express that. This is the platform to express our thoughts and feelings and
Yeah, which you apply to Srishti?
Java developers.
Okay, great. Absolutely. It's a platform for you to express your thoughts because we believe that if you're somebody who can express your thoughts and discuss with others, you can get better at whatever you do.
Yes.
Because what happens is as a Java developer, when you write your code, you may not have the best possible implementation. Maybe your code is not optimized. Maybe you did extra steps. But when you express your thought process, somebody else can come and debate with you. You
Yes.
both can have a constructive debate where you can develop a better mechanism for realizing your product.
Yes.
Or somebody from the marketing team comes and tells you what is needed in the product, what the customer wants. So you may need that dialogue, that ability to have a good conversation to understand what can be done on the technology front to make the technology better.
Yes, sir.
So this is why, this reflections are very powerful. Yeah, I think Lisa, you were interrupted quite a few times. Would you want to go in? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. So by watching the good examples of observations, I realized that my problem is that I tend to write briefly, like not like so, and I don't let my emotions impact my writing, which is bad because like we are working with people. If I don't let my emotions show, like I might be not able to connect with other people, their thoughts, their concepts. Like it's easier to understand something when you make it personal. For example, like it's hard, sometimes it might be hard to understand some abstract thing, but it will be easier if you connect with your problem that you had in life. Like I had something in my past that can be connected to this topic of discussions. For example, when we were on Socratic Dialogue, we were exploring what life-work balance, and the topic was very personal to me. So I got a little bit emotional at the end, a little bit, not really good, but better than other reflections that I had. So by making thing applying to myself, I will understand it better.
Brilliant. Lisa, when you say we got emotional, right, it's important to understand what modern psychology says. Modern psychology, I mean, if you read Daniel Goleman, all our decisions are through our emotions itself. If you're walking on the road and you see a car moving at a great speed, you get scared, you back off. You're courageous, you'd still run across the road. And too much of courage is called stupidity. Too little amount of courage is, fear. And what you strive for is the balance in between, right?
Yep.
So it's your emotion. Depending on what emotional state you're in, you take the decision at that time. You're very hungry, you eat food. You're not hungry, you don't eat. Emotion influences our decision. So what we want is, we want a regulation or a control over our emotion. But whatever we do is through our emotion. So even when you write some code, the logic which you use, the way you approach it is again some emotion which is influencing you. So the more you know your emotions, the more you have control over yourself. So it is not pertaining to one role of content writing or psychology and so on. It's pertaining to any field out there, that if you know your own emotions well, I think you know yourself well, you know your team well, and you're more successful in whatever you do.
Can you please also write the name of psychologist you mentioned? I would like to read a little bit about him.
Absolutely. Daniel Goleman, Goleman.
Okay, can you write a name in the chat, please?
Absolutely, I'm doing that.
Thank you.
So you can watch his talk with Google Talks. Okay, in Google Talks, Daniel Goleman gave a very good, talk on what is emotional intelligence, how can you develop your emotional intelligence, why is emotional intelligence critical at the workplace. I think it's a beautiful talk, and he's written a series of books on this subject. So I would like to conclude this orientation with one simple concept. I want to introduce you guys to a triangle. We believe in this triangle in a very big way at Deep Thought. So this is a triangle of metacognition, reflection, and self-awareness. Now, before I come to this triangle, let's talk about muscle, exercise, and fitness. Muscle, exercise, fitness. What happens when you do exercise?
Your muscles warm up and
Muscles.
It depends.
Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
It depends. Like it depends on which type of exercise we're making. But usually, exercise tend to improve our muscles. For example, like if you're making some physical exercise, you gain muscle. If you're making some yoga, you usually make your little muscles stronger. Usually it's like improving general well-being and muscles.
Yeah. So your exercise tends to improve your muscle and improves your fitness as well, right? Now let's compare that with metacognition. What is metacognition? Metacognition is your ability to think about your thinking. Why are you thinking this way is metacognition. Like when Lisa said that when I relate with my feelings while looking at an abstract concept, I connect with that concept faster and better. Now Lisa is thinking about why is she thinking better when she relates with it. She's thinking about her own thinking. That is called metacognition, right? Now, self-awareness is you knowing yourself really well. And reflection is this process which you're doing where you look at your thoughts, you look at the concepts you've learned, you look at your feelings, you look at all the examples, you look at the arguments that you use to arrive at that thought, right? Looking at all of them is reflection. Now, I'd like to ask you, metacognition, reflection, self-awareness. Which of this would you compare to muscle?
Self-awareness, probably.
Okay, which of these would you compare to exercise?
Reflections, because
Reflection.
like when we're making reflections, we tend to be more self-aware in improve our other ways.
So your reflection is like that exercise, right?
Yeah.
What is,
Yes.
what is the end output of the exercise? Fitness. So what is the end output of reflection?
Self-awareness.
So your
Metacognition is the muscles.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
So if you have more metacognition, if you have better metacognitive abilities, you know your own thought, you can refine your thought, you can grow very fast. You can become really good at any field very quickly. So reflection can be a great way for you to practice your metacognition and also become more self-aware. And what happens when you're more self-aware? You manage your life, your relationships, your work, all of that better. Instead of reacting to the situation, you respond to the situation. Let's say your code becomes buggy, your code doesn't work. So instead of panicking, you're like, okay, wait, let me take a step back. Let me understand what's going on and how do I do this? I'll give you an example. One of our team leads, Nitin, he was going through a very bad family situation at home. Most people in that case, they crumble and their work productivity comes down. So Nitin calls me up and says, okay, I need a leave for one day. I asked, okay, that's fine. You'll get your leave, but what do you plan to do? He said, Tarun, I'll reflect. That's what Deep Thought taught me. And then he goes, he reflects, he figures out what the problem is. He talks to everybody in his family, makes them sit, makes them reflect, and all the problems get solved. And then he comes back to work next day and tells his colleagues, guys, this is how I use the power of reflection. Whenever life throws any challenges at you, don't back off. Reflect, figure out, and approach the problem with more confidence. He said this, and he motivated his team. He's one of our best team leads, right? And when he was a trainee in Deep Thought, when he was a trainee, I sent him with 2 more people. He and 2 more people went to Bangalore for an event, and they were supposed to talk to certain prospective clients and explain what Deep Thought is about. On day 1, it was a disaster. They could not do anything properly. Then I call him on day 2 and I'm like, okay, what are you planning to do, Nitin? Nitin is like, Tarun, we actually sat down and we reflected. And then I figured out that this is where we went wrong and this is what we could do better. And then they went on day 1, they doubled the results of day 2. I mean, on day 2, they doubled the results of day 1. And he did this as a trainee himself, right? So now as he progressed within the company, he could develop his capabilities. He could work on a lot of his weaknesses by himself. And, he's on his way to being promoted as assistant vice president of the company. So being hired as a fresher within, 8 to 9 months, being promoted as at a vice president level. That's a career progression, right? I mean, Shravan and Shagun, they're already AVPs in Deep Thought. So Shagun managed 58 software projects last year. 58. People with less than 5 years work experience in any corporate company in India would have never done those many projects. So that's why she was made the AVP of Deep Thought, assistant vice president. Shravan Mandal, he's a beast when it comes to coding. Shravan, Shagun, Mohit, and one other person, Alex, 4 of them, they wrote 5,000 lines of code and 300 Git commits in 3 days. 5,000 lines of code in 3 days. You get the beast speed with which Deep Thought people code. Because the brain thinks very fast. The brain thinks very fast because we do a lot of these drills where our developers are reflecting while working. We want thinking developers. We do not want robot developers. Okay. So now, to cut the long story short, You guys can move into any breakout room of your choice except the do not disturb rooms. Except the do not disturb rooms. You can move into any breakout room of your choice. See whatever you want to see. I would like you to, produce high quality reflections, not because you'll be selected or rejected, but because you'd bring a better version of yourself. Sounds good? Hope you guys have fun.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for